My name is Kayla Chorley, and I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm a Canadian certified counselor and counseling therapist from Edmonton, Alberta. I own my own private practice called Pineapple Therapy, and it specializes in the area of anxiety. So I work with a lot of adolescent and young adult clients, just like yourself, who may be watching this video. And this is why I'm really excited to talk about anxiety as a topic, because I think it is something that we need to understand a bit more. It's totally a buzzword right now, and a lot of us use it in our day-to-day language. So I think it's helpful to understand what we mean when we're saying that. In terms of my experience, I've worked in a school system prior to becoming a counselor. So I've worked extensively in the classroom as well as in the counseling setting with anxiety and how it might show up. And as well, I have my own personal experience with anxiety that has led me sort of on this path of supporting others who also experience anxiety.
Thank you very much, Kayla, for that. I appreciate you joining us on this show today. Like our viewers would benefit from a lot of the conversation we're going to have. And if we can help somebody, one person, I'm happy about it. You know?
Me too. Me too. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
For sure. What is mindfulness and how does it work? Straight to
Yes. Straight to the point. I like it. Let's dive right in. So there is a man, an American man called Jon Kabat-Zinn, and he was one of the first people to kind of bring mindfulness to North America. So he kind of made it a little bit more accessible here on the North American side of things. But he defines it really nicely. So I'm actually going to quote him right here. He says, mindfulness is paying attention on purpose to our environment, internal and external experiences in the present moment without judgment. So real simply, we are noticing what's happening both internally and externally, and we're doing it in the present moment right now, right here, without judgment. Mm-hmm. Now, this sounds real simple. If we had to take a look at the definition, a lot of people are like, okay, so we're just noticing in the moment, whatever. But for a lot of us, the challenging part of this is the non-judgment piece. Because I'm going to bet, Eddie, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but I'm going to bet that you've experienced an emotion in your life and you've judged yourself for experiencing that emotion. True or false?
Of course.
Right? We've all done it, right? Mm-hmm. I hear this all the time. Oh, I shouldn't feel angry right now, or I shouldn't feel, upset about that. That is judgment in and of itself. So this is the piece of mindfulness that a lot of us struggle with. The other piece, paying attention can also be a challenge nowadays. We have so many distractions. A lot of us are thinking about what's going to happen next, or maybe thinking about what happened in the past. So it also can be a challenge to be in the moment. So definition is simple, but actually experiencing or working with mindfulness can be a bit of a challenge for many of us.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Just like the whole spectrum, it sounds simple, but to put it into action is the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I definitely agree with that. How does mindfulness help with anxiety?
Mm-hmm. So first, I just want to put a caveat here on mindfulness. I think a lot of us feel like in order to practice mindfulness, we need to have our mind empty, mm-hmm. or we need to turn off our thoughts. And that's not the case. As humans, we are thought makers. This is not something we're in control over. We are going to have thoughts when we experience mindfulness. The other thing that people often think is if we practice mindfulness, we have to meditate and we have to sit and find a quiet space for hours on end. And that's not true at all. We can experience mindfulness, in our everyday lives. We can experience mindfulness when we go for a walk. We can practice when we're with family and friends. We can practice when we're at soccer practice, right? All of these different spaces we can still practice mindfulness in. So when it comes to mindfulness and anxiety, what we find is that based on the definition of anxiety, it's worry about the future. So often when we are feeling anxious, we are preoccupied about what's going to happen next. That's why we have a lot of those what ifs. So what if this happens? What if, this next thing happens? And we also know that depression is actually usually more about past events. So it can be rumination or this like excessive worry about things that have already happened. So in general, depression and anxiety are what we call timed conditions. They are either future-based or past-based. So mindfulness actually encourages us to leave the past and the future and to be present now. And this is why it's often really helpful with anxiety, because we are now in the moment, not thinking so much about that future stuff. And we can do that by engaging with our five senses. So anytime that we are finding our attention being pulled to the future or the past, mindfulness allows us to engage those five senses to come back to the now.
So it's like a regulation mechanism type.
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely.
Now, this is good. I like this topic. I feel like it's probably where I'm going to learn the most.
I love it.
For sure. What is grounding, if we're going to get into that?
Yeah, so grounding is really a form of mindfulness. It's a self-soothing skill. So what happens when we're feeling flooded or overwhelmed? Flooded just means that we're maybe feeling a lot of emotion at once, maybe some intense emotion at once. Grounding actually helps us just to come back again to our present moment and reorient ourselves to the here and now. So this might be an opportunity to just kind of bring us back to reality, so to speak. It's a really helpful tool that we can do quick and easy. You can do this while you're in an exam. You can do this while you're standing in the grocery store. I do that a lot. But grounding can be a helpful tool in those moments.
Okay. So if we're speaking on grounding, would you consider, I guess the way we're talking about avoidance in order to come back, or kind of reset, do you think that would kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we wouldn't say that grounding is avoidance, so to speak. What we would say is it's an opportunity, like you said, to kind of reset and then come back to what we're doing that's presently causing us anxiety. So I know we spoke of the example of an exam. If we're in the middle of an exam and we need a moment to ground ourselves and come back to the present moment, it just helps us reset and then we can go back to our task. So slightly different than avoidance. Avoidance might look like we're not coming back to our task. We're getting out of there. We're no longer writing our exam. So a little bit different in how we use it.
Okay. Thanks for that. Now, do you have any grounding techniques or some quick tips that you can give our viewers to kind of help them out if they need to self-regulate?
Yeah, absolutely. I got tons. And I'm going to get you to try them with me, Eddie.
Perfect. I will. I'm ready.
Okay. I love it. So before we do these, I have to put a caveat on here. I always do. Often people will come into my office and they'll say, Kayla, mindfulness doesn't work for me. I don't believe in breathing exercises. I don't like mindfulness. And I'll say, okay, why? And their answer always is, well, it doesn't make anxiety go away. Mm-hmm. And I say to them, you're absolutely right. It doesn't. Mindfulness and grounding techniques are not designed to make anxiety go away. So if we go into them with the mindset of after I do this breathing exercise, I'm no longer going to feel anxious, we are setting ourselves up for failure because they don't do that. That's not what they're going to do. So we just have to be cautious about how we approach them. The other thing I always say at the beginning before we get started with our exercises is just to remember that we want to use these tools both when we are feeling anxious, but also when we're not feeling anxious. And there's a reason for that. If we only use these tools when we are feeling anxious, we are now going to associate breathing exercises, mindfulness exercises with anxiety. When we try and do a breathing exercise next time, we might actually see that it promotes anxiety because we've only used it when we're feeling anxious. The other thing is we know when we're feeling anxious, we're shutting off our prefrontal cortex. So our reasoning and problem solving center is offline. So it's really hard for us to think of strategies in that moment. But if we practice these strategies all the time, even when we're not feeling anxious, it's going to make us be able to pull them out of our toolbox much faster, so to speak. So just a few things before we get started with the actual experiential stuff here. But those are important things to know. Okay. We're going to do a few strategies together. Let's start. Ooh, how are we feeling? Let's start with maybe tracing our hands. So I want you to choose a hand.
Okay.
Awesome. And we're going to do a breathing exercise together. Now, this is one that I really like because you can do this at the grocery store. This is the one I use at the grocery store quite frequently. You can do this under your desk in an exam, whatever feels comfortable. And what we're going to do, Edity, is we're going to trace our hand real slowly.
Okay.
And when we go up, we're breathing in. And then we're going to pause. And we're going to breathe out through our mouth when we go down. Okay, let's try it together. We're breathing in. Pause. And breathe out. Breathe in. Pause, breathe out, breathe in, pause, breathe out. One more, breathe in, pause, breathe out. What did you think?
Calming.
Yeah. Well, it's nice for a few reasons. So first of all, anytime we have touch, whether it's from someone giving us a hug or we touch ourselves, our body doesn't know the difference. It's going to release oxytocin in our brain. So that's actually a feel-good chemical. So it can have a soothing effect on us. But the other part of that is anytime we slow down our breathing, we are allowing ourselves to regulate again. So this is a really helpful kind of tool. And it's really discreet. Again, you can do it under your desk. No one will even know if we need to reset in that moment.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if someone's experiencing high anxiety, how often would they be able to calm themselves down enough to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's interesting because anxiety generally lasts 90 seconds. Okay. Generally, all emotions last about a minute and 30 seconds, so 90 seconds in total. That means we might have to ride it out a little bit. And when we get to a point where that anxiety has decreased a little bit, so we can get this part, our prefrontal cortex, back online, then we can move into our strategies to help us in that moment to reset again. Okay. So someone might have to do this activity several times. They could do it once and feel good. It really depends on the person. Again, with the understanding, of course, that it's not going to make our anxiety go away. It's just helping us decrease it or kind of turn down the volume on it is a better way of saying that, so that we can get that prefrontal cortex back online.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. Any other techniques?
Oh, I got so many. You're not getting away that easy. We got a whole bunch more.
Perfect.
So the next one is called dropping anchor. And this is a famous acceptance and commitment therapy exercise. So if you've heard of it, that's maybe where you've heard of it. If you haven't, that's cool too. But the idea is if we think of a boat that's on the ocean, let's say, and this boat is slowly making its way to shore, but then a storm rolls in. This boat has two options. Well, number one, it would like to get back to shore as soon as it can. But let's say the storm's rolling in pretty fast. It can't get back in time. So what it decides to do is it decides to drop an anchor. Now, Eddie, I am no fisherman, so I don't know much about fishing beyond that. I know an anchor is heavy and it's supposed to stabilize the boat a little bit.
Nice.
So when they drop the anchor, of course, it does not change the weather. The storm is still going to happen. Still going to be big waves, still going to be thunder, lightning, rain, all that good stuff that comes with it. However, the anchor is going to help stabilize the boat so that it can get through the storm, or the storm essentially can go by as it rides it out. We can think of this too as emotion. If we think of emotion as a storm, so in this case, anxiety as our storm, what we want to do in this moment is drop an anchor so that we can stabilize ourselves enough to move through the anxiety. So this is what this next kind of exercise does for us. Now, Eddie, if you feel comfortable, you're welcome to close your eyes. If you don't, that's okay too. You can just choose a space to kind of look at on your screen or behind your screen.
I'll close my eyes. So I'm all in.
I like it. Okay, I'll close mine too as we do this together.
Perfect.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring our attention inwards. And we're just going to notice any thoughts, feelings, or sensations that are coming up for us in this moment. And again, we're just going to notice them. We're not trying to make them go away or change them in any way. We're just acknowledging them. So I'll give you some time to check in. And then keeping those thoughts, feelings, and sensations in mind, I want us now to move to our body. And I want you just to press the heels of your feet into the ground, knowing that you are in control of this movement as you do it. Just imagine energy moving through your body to the ground, through your feet, as you press your heels in. And then I want you to bring your attention to your surroundings and just notice anything that you hear. Any sounds that maybe are in the background. Maybe my voice is one of them. Maybe you can hear a dog in the background or a fan. Just notice it. And then one more time, we're going to go back inside. And again, check in with those thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Just notice this time if they're the same thoughts, feelings, or sensations, or if they've changed in any way. And then I want you to notice if they're bigger or smaller, closer or further away. Again, we're just noticing. We're not changing or trying to make them go away. Now, keeping those thoughts, feelings, sensations in our mind. Again, this time I just want you to stretch whatever feels comfortable in this moment. You can move your body, keeping in mind that you are in control of this movement. as you do it. And one last time, I want you to check in with your senses. This time, I just want you to notice anything that you can smell in your space. Maybe it's a candle. Maybe it's lunch. Just anything you notice. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes and come back.
That was soothing.
It was soothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So overall, what would you say you experienced during that?
It felt good. I felt like I was listening to one of those YouTube relaxation.
Yes, I nailed it.
Good. I appreciate it. I needed that.
Good. That's good. Maybe we should have started with that before we recorded.
Good. I wouldn't have been as nervous.
Well, you're doing a good job. And that's the nice thing about doing something like dropping anchor, right? It just brings us back, connects with our body, our thoughts, feelings, sensations. We're not trying to make anything change or go away. We're just noticing. And that in itself can feel pretty soothing.
I think speaking of that, it brings us back to the point where we're embracing the feeling and our environment and trying to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to push anything away. We're trying to invite all the energies and emotions to come in, and then we'll work together to kind of move forward. So that's kind of where I got what I got from there.
Eddie, I couldn't have said it better myself. I feel like you have learned how we deal with anxiety, which I'm so excited about.
You're the Zen master.
The Zen master. I love it. I'm going to put that on my business cards now.
Nice.
But do you have any questions about any of those practices? Anything that maybe would be something that would be challenging about experiencing them now that you've experienced them, or anything that you could feel might be difficult?
Not really, aside from the fact that people's anchors might be different. So my anchor might be different from yours, and just like that, right? So that's a great point where you maybe just have to find your anchor, see what would work for you. Maybe it's an old feeling that you can connect with and try to bring that feeling back. Or if it's a person that you talk to, like something that's deep to you that can kind of calm and relax you. So maybe
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. And Eddie, it doesn't have to be this complicated either, because one of the questions I always get asked is, well, I can't do a breathing exercise in the middle of an exam. Everyone's going to stare at me and be like, that person's doing a breathing exercise. So that's true. We don't want to put you in a situation that feels uncomfortable, because then we're promoting anxiety again. We don't want that. So if you're in an exam situation and we still want to do some grounding or mindfulness, we can do it real simply. We can take an object that we have on our desk, maybe it's like a pen or a pencil, and in our minds, internally, we can just describe it using our 5 senses. So we can say, okay, what does it look like? Well, it's blue, and it's long, kind of a rectangular shape, and it has writing on it, right? That could be an example. And then we could say, okay, what does it feel like? Well, it's pretty smooth. The writing's a little bit, kind of sticks up a little bit. You can feel it's a little bit texturized there. And it writes nicely, has a lot of ink in it, right? So we could go through all 5 senses with an object, and just take that time to check in. That in itself is a mindfulness activity, and it's really simple, and we can do that in the middle of an exam if we need to. So just an alternative, if we can't do the breathing exercise or any of that fancy stuff, it doesn't have to be fancy. We can just take an object, describe it.
Okay, depending on how you're doing, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
people wanted to reach you, where can they reach you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's pineappletherapy.ca. They're welcome to pop on there, and they can connect with me that way, or they can send me an email, Kayla@pineappletherapy.ca, or they can find me on Instagram. Pineapple Therapy YEG is my handle.